Welcome to Industry Insiders, created and produced by the Center for Entertainment and Hospitality Management at California State University, Fullerton. During this series, we sit down with influential professionals in the entertainment and hospitality industries that are located across the world. Our goal is to learn about each professional's career and gain wisdom from their experience in the industry.
Sydney Rossakov is currently a Senior Product Manager of Media Creation at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of the largest social media platforms used to help build and engage an individual's professional platform. The platform is also used for career development and allows job seekers to search through job postings that may have been added by recruiters or companies. To add on, Sydney holds a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in entertainment and hospitality management from Cal State Fullerton. Now please join us as we learn from alumni Sydney Rossakov.
All right, welcome in to Industry Insiders. We're excited to have our guest with us, Sydney Rossakov. My co-host for today is EHM student Kevin Mock. So let's welcome Sydney. You're on mute really quickly, so make sure you come off mute there. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you are streaming from today.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So as mentioned, I'm Sydney. I am class of 2015, which I was just told was 7 years ago. Try not to do the math a lot, but I'm currently as mentioned, Senior Product Manager at LinkedIn. And I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles, so not too far from Fullerton.
All right. So Kevin dropped off. He'll pop on in a minute here. When you think back to your time at Cal State University Fullerton, what are some of your fondest memories?
Okay. A mix of professional ones and not so professional ones I'll do. So best memories are probably once I got out of the general ed and like general business classes. As much as I enjoyed them and it reaffirmed that I wanted to continue doing business in some respect, getting out of those and getting into the EHM program concentration classes and declaring that concentration, I think at the time, like spring of sophomore year, that was a big highlight for me, and also felt like oh man, I'm actually like taking the plunge of maybe declaring what my career path will be. So that was a big highlight. And then all of the engaging curriculum, genuinely, that came out of those classes and unlocked a lot of doors for me, whether it was truly like unlocking doors into a career path and an internship after graduation, or just me realizing what I was actually interested in. And then of course, this was pre-COVID, so I don't want to rub it into anyone, but loved the campus atmosphere. I wasn't involved in any Greek life or anything, but loved taking opportunities to go to Dollar Beer Wednesdays sometimes, and then trying to get through my classes the next week. But really liked the campus environment and how it was pretty diverse. So
amazing. So Kevin, welcome to the stream. You're my co-host today. Introduce yourself. Tell us what year you are, where you're streaming from, and then we're going to ask Sydney some questions, go back and forth. So Kevin, take it away.
All right. So as Professor Amari said, I'm Kevin Mock, and I'm a senior at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm also on the EHM Student Advisory Board. And today I'm streaming from my internship in Hollywood.
Awesome. Good. So how did you currently, Sydney, this is for Sydney, how did you get your current job, and how important was networking in getting to where you are today?
Okay. Networking was important for every single job I've had, genuinely. And I think like, if you ask me, do you like networking? The answer maybe is not always yes. Do I like what it does for my career? Absolutely. So my current job at LinkedIn, I got through a referral from someone I met at a Women in Tech mixer in San Francisco. So I was already in San Francisco working for Evernote. And I don't even know how I found it, but there are so many resources, regardless of whether you're in like the tech industry, in an entertainment perspective, or you're in entertainment. There's so many groups even online. So this was actually, I found this group online. So that would apply for today. I think it was a Facebook group for women in tech. And then I found that there was like a cohort of folks that were in San Francisco, and someone was hosting something at their apartment for like the first 10 people to sign up. And I ended up meeting someone that referred me to LinkedIn 6 months later. So that's how I got my current job. And even before that, getting my very first job and starting my career was through networking. And that was through, I don't want to call it forced networking, but highly encouraged networking from one of the EHM professors at the time, senior year. I think it was around now. I think it was March of 2015. I was toying with the idea of going to grad school, but I was like, maybe I'll take a year off. Maybe I'll go get my JD. I kind of want to be a lawyer, business, entertainment law. I liked my entertainment law class, but I was like, I don't know. It's a big investment. I don't know, spring of senior year, that feeling. And was told and highly encouraged to go to one of the networking events that spring, targeted towards seniors and targeted towards landing something after graduation. And so one thing led to another at the networking event. It was more of a formal one where you were assigned 3 different execs in the industry to talk to. And based on some of the stuff I learned in Professor Chandler's entertainment operations class, I sat there and talked about digital distribution of media. This is a real thing. I'm not BSing. I talked about digital distribution of media with this person from Disney that was working at Disney Interactive and leading the product org. And I didn't even know what any of that really meant because I had not taken a deep dive into tech. And little did I know that I was preaching to the choir about entertainment distribution in a digital sense because they were working on Disney Plus. And I did not know that at the time. And even though this was back in 2015. So resonated with the person who ended up hiring me because I didn't know it was Disney Life or Disney Plus. It was called Disney Life at the time. And I ended up staying at Disney for 3 years. And every opportunity thereafter has also been networking. So when people say it's important, they're not really lying. It's pretty important.
Definitely important. When you look at your current job today, what do you love about what you do now?
Yeah, I think one of the things working at such a large company, I think LinkedIn, we have like 10,000 employees. That's across R&D, so like product engineering, design, plus sales, plus support, et cetera. So, Facebook, Google level size. But with that comes like a lot of impact. So I know that the things that my team's building can hopefully positively impact a lot of people. And our mission is to create economic opportunity for the global workforce. And it's nice to feel like you're at like a truly mission-driven company. I also get to work with such a diverse group of people across so many disciplines. And like, if you looked at the people I work with and you look at their majors in college, like every single one is different. And that's one of the nice things about working at this intersection of tech and entertainment, or tech and media, is we have producers on the team that do live streams for LinkedIn. We have an editorial team that we're trying to make products for. And then we have like our users that are posting things about their new job or looking for a job to their feed. So I like that we get to build products for like such a diverse group of people, and the people building them are pretty diverse too.
I love it. I love it. Kevin, I'm going to toss it over to you for your first question while I figure out what I want to ask Sydney next. So over to you, Kevin.
All right, absolutely. So Sydney, I know you worked at Disney. I wanted to know like how you got to work at Disney and like what was your like experience working at the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, and I think I have somewhere over here. Oh, here's one of my pins. I just got memorabilia floating around still to this day. But yeah, so that first job was based off of that networking event. So obviously a little different now, but still rings true the fact that I just sat there and talked about something I was passionate about. And coincidentally, I'm still in contact with this person. They're no longer at Disney. They're running something else now. And very grateful for that initial introduction by virtue of the EHM program. I started as an intern and was converted to full-time after the summer. I think mostly because of the interest there, and I was able to figure out how to make myself valuable. The role was honestly kind of vague when I joined. It was like, we need people, and we liked what you talked about, even though you didn't know about streaming. I was like, all right. And I had never done product management before, which is my role. And I realized very quickly in that role that summer, when I was filling the gaps in what they needed for product management, which is really figuring out exactly working with research and design and figuring out exactly what people are looking for when they are using a product, and then working with engineering to figure out how to build it and how fast we can build it and things like that. Realized within that summer, I was like, this is the job for me. I would always say, like, I don't want to sit behind a desk all day, which I'm doing, but you know what I mean? Like I didn't hate finance, but I didn't really want to do it. I didn't hate marketing, but I didn't know if I really wanted to do that. So I was searching for this role that I didn't know existed. So stayed there for 3 whole years. The highlights there, no surprise that some of the best people on earth work for the happiest place on earth. Still in contact with almost everyone I worked with. Love everyone that I worked with. Seeing sneak peeks of movies did not hurt either. I saw Star Wars the week before it came out, which was like the Star Wars in 2015.
Yeah.
That was like you would walk around the campus in Glendale and Burbank, and there would be signs like, don't spoil it for the rest of us. If you were able to snag the early access tickets, don't do this, don't do that. Seeing like Black Panther early, those are fond memories. But I think knowing that, just similar to LinkedIn, but in a different respect, like the work you're doing makes people happy. Maybe it's not saving lives, but it's filling this happiness gap, hopefully. So,
yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, we have a lot of students who want to work for Disney. If you were to give them any advice on maybe how to get in there and help their resume portfolio rise to the top, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think some of the advice probably rings true for other companies as well. So look through your network, plugging LinkedIn, but because it's the best guide to use for this, go through your network and see if you know anyone at Disney or anyone that recently left Disney, because that's a huge thing too. Like the alumni networks, just like a school, the alumni networks of these larger companies are very strong and mighty, and referrals still happen that way. Like I still know a bunch of people at Disney as an example. When you work there long enough, you have like a pretty good network. I would look through your connections, even like secondary connections, and see if you can make a connection with anyone that currently works there or recently left. Being at CSUF, like there's probably someone in your first or second degree connection that works there in some respect. And then from that, let's say you can't find anyone and you really want to work there. Some folks give the advice of finding hiring managers and HR folks on LinkedIn. I will be honest, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Some teams have a policy of like, they're not going to fully engage with folks that aren't in the process, blah, blah, blah. You can try it. You can try to reach out to recruiters specifically for Disney and see, or any company. We'll say this isn't just for Disney. You can reach out to recruiters and see if they can talk to you. That's totally possible. And then finally, let's say you don't have like a direct line in, really make sure that your resume is optimized for these resume reading products. You can Google this. There's a lot of resources online. Everyone loves like a beautiful looking resume, but it actually doesn't always translate well. And I'm sure some of the professors have talked about this, like when you're preparing for jobs, not all of them look like, you'll feed them in your PDF, you'll upload it, and then what the recruiter sees on their end is like a mess of words. And so really look into like resume optimization if you don't have a direct line into a company, and even if you do. So a mix of networking, and then if that fails, really make sure your stuff's optimized, and double down on like, also in this like world, volunteer work never hurts. Disney is really about extracurriculars as well, and that's not a requirement, but if you're looking to fill your resume, showing genuine passion in something helps for sure, especially for like entry level stuff. Disney has like a rough understanding when I was there of the fact that not everyone's going to have 5 years of experience when they graduate college. So.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin, did you have a follow-up question for us on this?
Well, I mean, I'm actually one of those people who wants to work for Disney. So yeah, I mean, it's very hard. It's very hard to work for Disney. I've applied for so many internships at Disney, and I've almost been considered for one, but nope, it didn't happen. So it's tough.
Yeah, I would say also be really intentional about like the roles you're applying for. I cannot speak on behalf of Disney right now, but I do know that like most larger companies, sometimes if you're like shooting a resume or an application out to a bunch of different disciplines within Disney, sometimes it's even a red flag at any company of like, wait, you just like, what do you actually want to do? So I would also be really intentional about what you're applying for. And I think that's true for a lot of the larger companies where there are a lot of opportunities across. So just really nailing down what you actually might want to explore could help too.
Interesting. I find that we learn the most from maybe tough times and failures that we go through in our career, personally and professionally. So how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure that you would like to share with us?
Wow. So in tech, we fail a lot.
Yes.
So one thing is, especially like truly when you're in the tech industry and you're working at like a very like, I don't want to say a true tech company, but when I was at Disney, it was very early on. And so we weren't necessarily building the way like I build products now. And that is every single thing you build is like an experiment. We go into everything thinking there is a possibility it might fail. And that was somewhat foreign to me until I got to Evernote, I think, which was before LinkedIn. Realizing, so like in the past, you could invest all this time. Like there was a project at Disney, I can't name what it was, but there was a project at Disney. We invested so much time and just as a team, and we were kind of given the bandwidth to do this. It was like, go run with it. Build, what do you think is best for like Disney Plus, for example?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember myself and a few other folks on the team invested a bunch of time researching things. Just like we went 0 to 100 fully. We didn't do things iteratively. We just like went for it. Fully was a failure. Failure in the sense of like the usability was kind of poor. This was in the very beginning of my career, and usability was poor. I remember being so nervous because I was like, oh my God, like it's like my fault because I'm the product manager and we invested so much time and resources into something that doesn't work. The engineers are all going to seem like their time's been wasted. Design's never going to see their stuff come to life. And I remember having this moment, very beginning of my career, being like, am I going to actually keep this job because I messed up? And then I remember having a conversation with one of my managers, and they were like, if this is making you nervous, you should you need to shake that because you are going to fail so much across your career, especially in tech when like I think Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg was the one that was like fail fast, which is true. Like break things, whatever the phrase is. And now to this day, I would much rather fail at something and learn. So like build something in a month, ship it out, see that no one on LinkedIn likes to use it. Maybe there's even some complaints to our help team and be like, all right, well, now we know what not to do. So I don't know if I have like a favorite failure that like one specific one that just totally changed my life. But I think it's because so much of my job is failing and like being very comfortable with this failure. Something, and I know I mentioned this in one of the classes this week, but Growth by Carol Dweck is a great book to understand like the impact of your failures and how they're not really failures and it's more growth. Yeah, I have it right next to me. You probably have it over there too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's right over there. But yeah, so Mindset is an awesome book to read. I think it's growth versus fixed mindset. And that I read that in the beginning of me working at LinkedIn because LinkedIn is very experiment heavy culture. And it helped me realize that like things aren't necessarily failures. And if anything, even if it goes really poorly and you get reprimanded somehow for it, like, you're not going to do it again, or you're going to think about it a little differently. So I kind of like failures at this point, but it took me a while.
I do too. You've had a lot of mentors, a lot of bosses. What do you think is the best advice that you've ever received so far?
So I think this is something I received from one of the best bosses I think I've had. And the qualifier for that, the reason why was because this person allowed me to fail and also knew exactly when to step in at a time when I was like trying to get promoted, especially, and was really at like this peak of trying to jump over the ledge into the next level of my career. And one of the pieces of advice I got in an annual review was like, hey, you're doing great, but like you need to ask for help. Like why do you think you're not asking for help? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Ask for, like, am I not doing something right? And he's like, no, that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is you're taking on a lot of stuff. I know you're taking on a lot of stuff. This was also, I think, in the beginning of COVID. And I was like hitting the pavement, working long hours. I felt like I was killing it. And this person was like, you have so much on your plate. You need to figure out how to ask for help or say no.
Yeah.
And the asking for help in the sense of either delegating or asking my manager to delegate or asking the other team I'm working with or telling them I don't have bandwidth for this. That advice is advice that I've passed down whenever I start to hear things like, I don't know, like from a mentee, for example, like I feel like I'm lost, or like, I feel like I don't have the right structure for like building this strategy, or I feel like this, and this. It's like, well, love that you're asking for me for help, but you can ask your team for help too. And I think asking questions and asking for help and being very comfortable with that and knowing what you know and you don't know, that was like some of the best advice. And I think it was advice that floated around for a while, but having it told to your face, you need to ask for help. And that's part of your review. It's like, I hear you. And now I ask for help all the time now.
Well done. I think asking for help and saying no, those are skills that you have to really develop.
They are.
So, yeah.
And I think it sounds really easy. It's just a word. No, I don't have bandwidth for this. But I think especially earlier career, when you say no to something, it can feel like you're saying no to like an opportunity or growth. And that's what I struggled with, was like, wow, if I'm an intern, I'm looking to get converted, or like, I felt like I have imposter syndrome. If the imposter syndrome thing's going on, of course, it's going to feel weird to say no to something or ask for help. And that's just for me personally, but it's definitely a skill. And I think like, don't underestimate the power of that skill.
Agree. Kevin, over to you for your next question.
So like, what was like your favorite thing about, studying at Cal State Fullerton and declaring EHM?
I think the moment when I realized it was probably the right decision, which I think was, I think like truly just starting junior year. And because I think like, if my memory is serving me well, because I also realized that like, I think my sophomore year was almost 10 years ago, which I'm like freaking out about a little bit, but I realized that this morning. So I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like 9 years ago. Anyways, I think like once I declared, I had like this sense of nervousness of seeing some of my peers declare other things like finance. And, I think the entrepreneurship program I just started, and I was like, oh, I don't know, like, hopefully this works. I don't know. I hope this isn't a mistake. I also was very much of the mind of like, I have to graduate in 4 years, which I did, but that's like not, that is not fully necessary. And I'm glad that's not necessarily the norm anymore, because that feels such an arbitrary block of time, but don't get me started on that. But like, I think once I got into junior year and I started taking some of the first entertainment courses and realizing like, wow, this is like actually kind of fun. It almost felt like in elementary school when your teachers put like a lot of effort into connecting like things with really literally elementary things that you know and understand. Being like, here's this analogy for math in elementary school. And then you get into the EHM program, and you're like, oh, it's business finance and it's accounting, but it's stuff I'm like excited about. So just adding that layer on top of business, which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed business the first 2 years, but having that extra layer of being like, okay, like even if I, ended up in finance, like I could be excited about doing entertainment finance or entertainment law. Like I could do this.
Yeah. What is a skill that you're trying to improve on, and what skill do you look for when you're hiring new college graduates?
Okay. The second skill is definitely the thing on asking questions. I do interview college graduates for LinkedIn. And one of the things, I mean, like, you don't need to be like prepared with questions you don't care about at the end of an interview. Like, we can kind of see through it, but it shows interest. I would say like genuinely, to the point I mentioned to Kevin earlier about like being really intentional with what you're applying for. There's like a balance of getting the job, because I totally get that. Like, we need the security, we need the job, but also realizing like what you actually like about the job and the company. And so being able to, in an interview, kind of weave how you feel about the company and the company's mission. If you can find it on the internet, LinkedIn makes it real easy. It's all over the place, but same with Disney. But like, if you can kind of weave in your genuine interest in something, we're not looking you to fluff us up and BS, but weaving genuine interest and questions about the company and questions about the role and like what your day-to-day would be like, so that you're like actually invested in that. It's always good for the interview process. And then if you get the job, continuing that, like keep asking questions fully. Like, no one thinks you know how to do A, B, C, D through Z of your job on day one after college. And if they do, that's a big warning sign probably for the company, not for you, but for you looking at the company. So yeah, just keep asking questions and flexing that muscle and building that skill of knowing what you know and you don't know, and realizing that failure is going to happen. And then for myself, I mentioned this in one of the classes earlier this week, but I am, like most people, looking to climb up my career ladder. And one of the things I've been working on is just mentorship and moving into like a manager position, because I'm a product manager, but I do not manage people. I lead people because that's part of the role, but I'm not necessarily directly managing someone. So I've been investing some time in the last year of outside of LinkedIn, even putting myself in positions to mentor like early career product managers and things like that through some external platforms. So trying to build that muscle while also just keeping myself interested in what I'm doing. And that also includes taking breaks. So I've been taking breaks in the last 2 years of COVID while also trying to figure out how to like flex that muscle of managing and mentoring when you don't see people in person, because I'm fully remote. So
Yeah. You know, when we reviewed in class after your visit, one of the most popular and most, I guess, the favorite thing that the students really spoke about, what you share with them, is just being able to like take breaks and kind of try to figure out that balance. So that
yeah,
really resonated with the students. Can you
right.
share your perspective on that? Because I think in this day and age, with so many ways to connect and just so much
Yeah.
technology and expectations and the whole hustle culture, we
Yes.
found your perspective very refreshing. So can you kind of share with us what your perspective is on that,
Gladly.
and then how we can start to maybe adopt some of your best practices?
Sure. Yeah. So glad that resonated, because I wish it resonated probably with more people. And I think maybe people are afraid to talk about it. What Professor Roberts was saying was earlier in the week, I'd mentioned that one of the things to just look out for and really keep yourself in check for is this concept of the hustle culture, which is what I'm calling it. I've heard other people call it, but that is the fact that every time you open LinkedIn or you're on Instagram or Twitter, wherever you are, you're guaranteed to see a post either by a peer, a recent grad, someone that may be in a very influential position that you want to emulate in your life or your career. You will see posts from all of these people either humble bragging or just showing their day-to-day. And while some of those day-to-days are totally representative of that person, that is not necessarily always healthy, of this hustle culture of nonstop, do the grind, working weekends, working late. I do not do that anymore. But I fell into that trap for the first like few years, probably after graduation, of like almost wearing it as a badge of honor that I would like work late and like, oh, I was at the office till 8 and things like that. And I found myself talking to people about it. And I've realized over time that it really portrays this sense that in order to be successful and get all of these things, you have to have this sometimes unhealthy dedication to your job. And it's less of like a dedication to your job, it's like your working style. You can be successful and get places in your career without buying into that and like taking time to yourself. If you are loving what you do, and which like I do, and I for sure sometimes still work late, still open my work computer on weekends and do something, but it's mainly because I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget this, or I'm really heads down on something I want to finish. You don't have to do that to get hired, get promoted, and keep your job. And so just being really mindful of your own work-life balance and setting boundaries, especially if you're going to end up somewhere that is remote. And mine's like a hybrid model, but I personally am fully remote. So it is up to me to set my boundaries. People aren't seeing me leave for lunch. They're not seeing me leave the office and saying like, oh, Sydney's gone. I'm not going to Slack her. All they're seeing is the fact that I'm online. And so I personally have like blocked off my calendar for lunch, block off my mornings and evenings because I work like East Coast hours on the West Coast. And so it's really up to you to set your own boundaries with work, and don't fall into the hustle culture trap. And there's some anti-hustle culture like articles and stuff you can find online, but again, not bad to work hard. Just keep it in check, please. You will burn out. I almost promise you that if you don't do that, you will burn out, and that's not fun. So
Yes. Kevin, what you have for us next?
Let's see. So I mean, like what? So I know like I know you did an internship at Disney, but like, did you have any other experience in college that you did, or that was like your first thing?
yeah, so that was one of the things that made me so nervous senior year. I was someone that took, I mean, I already mentioned, I was like, I need to graduate in 4 years, which again, thrown in the hustle culture thing. I don't think that everyone's different, but I don't know if my path would have been the same. I don't know if I would have went to that specific networking event if I didn't get there in 4 years, but it's not necessary. But because of that, I took totally full course loads every single semester. And I think I actually took 18 credits or something one semester, and I took summer classes. It caused me to not have time to do anything else. And I had one other internship, and it was for the Newport Beach Film Festival, I think also that spring. Nice. So I had an internship. And so that was really like boots on the ground, jack of all trades type thing for there were a few other people in the program that did that, and maybe they still do this program at EHM, but a lot of CSUF and Irvine students, I remember. And that was awesome to see the inner workings of a film festival. Awesome to see. We did like a lot of like high level comms and write-ups of the films. It was a great learning experience in written communication for sure. And also working like a bunch of different roles and wearing so many hats. Like I worked a merch booth one day. I sat in and wrote reviews for movies on another day. Like it was so different every single day. So I had that, but I didn't have anything else, quote unquote. So I was pretty nervous. And I think a lot of students end up in that position. And that's also why I was like, I just need to land something after graduation. Like who knows what it's going to be. But yeah, so I overworked myself and didn't have time for an internship before that. So yeah. I am speaking from experience in the hustle culture thing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. When we look at LinkedIn, is there anything maybe that you're able to share with us that's coming down the pike, or some new developments that you're able to share that, excites you as we look forward?
What can I say? Hold on, I'm going to Google something. See if I can. I'm serious. I'm going to Google something to make sure I can say it. I'm pretty sure it was announced.
Yes.
Let's see.
Google it. We'll check it out, and then I'm going to ask you about books after this too.
Okay. So I can mention this. Okay. So there is an article about it this year. So we are investing in a few different buckets right now. One of the buckets that LinkedIn's very invested in right now is our creators. And creators do not have to be influencers. These can be like professional influencers for sure. It can be Professor Roberts, or it can be you, Kevin, like posting whatever you're interested in at like a very persistent basis. We need better tools to help people tell their stories on LinkedIn in a more visual way. So that's one thing. And that's what I'm very focused on. I'm very focused on the visual media thing, hence the media in my title. Can't say more than that, but this year, that's a huge focus. The other thing that is totally public is our continued investment in events. And one of the things that the team is testing, not my team, but that is totally public, is the concept of audio events and virtual events overall. And that's something that LinkedIn started, virtual events and live streaming and using StreamYard and all these tools. 2020, that happened. Perfect timing with the pandemic. But the team's restarting that investment and continuing to find more ways to get people together virtually. So I'm excited by the fact that all of these things do end up helping people find economic opportunity. And it's about connecting people to those opportunities, and whether that's going to happen through someone telling their story in the feed of their portfolio. And this is like very visual, easy way for me to display what I worked on in college, or someone running an audio room of pitches for their like startup or something. So I'm excited that we're investing in things like that. That's why I'm still there.
I love it. You'll be very proud to know that we're live streaming this interview to my personal LinkedIn profile also. So
Yay.
I wanted to share that with you. I'm going to ask one question about books and then let Kevin ask his final question. You mentioned Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Mhm.
What other books do you think we should really kind of stop what we're doing right now and read them? And we can take a couple suggestions, 2 or 3 books, because we love to read. I personally love to read, but I'm looking to acquire more. So what do you have for us?
There's a big bookcase right here that you guys can't see. You know what? So if you are into podcasts, and if you've heard of Masters of Scale, which is by the LinkedIn founder, Reid Hoffman, I listened to this podcast before I worked at LinkedIn, by the way. He has a written form of Masters of Scale out, and it's quite good. So if you're someone who likes podcasts and wants to be like inspired,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know I'm like advertising now, but it was very reachable. Masters of Scale, Reid Hoffman. So it's almost like the written version of, it's got charts. We love a chart.
Okay.
Got, everything like that. So that's really good about founders and how they've had their growth tactics for their companies. A few other things that I have really enjoyed. I actually, if you want a story of like a non-linear career progression, and also about like a woman in business, Bossy Pants by Tina Fey is very inspirational. Yeah. And I think you're like, oh, Tina Fey's book, it's inspirational. Is it just comedy? It tells a great story about like her career and how she didn't just like graduate college and become a head writer on SNL. Like it's very, very good. And I read it right after I graduated actually, and I still have it. And then maybe the last thing, if we want to go back to just typical business, and this is not always the most exciting, but High Output Management, I think it's by Anderson. I can't see, but High Output Management has a lot of really good case studies. And actually, if you're like graduating and you're looking to prepare for anything like more analytical or critical thinking, it's a great non-textbook book about business. So if people might be burnt out on reading business textbooks, but High Output Management was really good. And pretty much everyone I know, at least in this industry, has read it at one point or another. So there's 3 for you.
Great suggestions. Thank you. Kevin, over to you for your final question.
All right. So my last question, I actually like really thought about this one. So, just because it's my last question. So what made you want to declare business at Fullerton and EHM, and then why did you want to go into the kind of career path that you're doing, since this is, after all, it's Industry Insider, right?
Yeah, great final question from you. So I mentioned, I alluded to getting a JD at some point in this conversation, but I'm not sure where this came from. When I was little, I'm saying little, like elementary school to beyond, I said I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't really know why. So then I got to high school and I still was like, I want to be a lawyer, but then I started questioning it. And I was like, ooh, what if like I should get a bachelor's in something I can use, quote unquote, like before law school. And I remember looking like in high school and looking at like LSAT scores in relation to majors. And I was like, business majors do pretty good on the critical thinking stuff. And so I just like went for it. Then got there, and as mentioned, the first 2 years I did really like the curriculum. loved my like business law classes. I was like, all right, maybe I will just be like a business lawyer. Then when it was time to declare concentrations, I had that feeling of, wow, I would like love to do something kind of fun. Maybe I want to be an agent. Maybe I want to be like a sports agent of sorts. And so I was like, you know what? EHM makes a lot of sense. It was ETM at the time, Entertainment Tourism Management. And so it just kind of kept evolving. And then the law space at the time did not look good in terms of acceptance rates and jobs after graduation. And I started getting a little nervous. So when I hit my senior year, it's like, do I actually want to go to law school? I didn't start prepping for the LSAT. I was like, I guess I'll take at least a year off. And that turned into the networking event, turned into me ending up at like the intersection of entertainment and tech, realizing that I got to play around with, at the time, like professionally made media, like Disney content. What better content could you be grabbing from? And playing around with what would become Disney Plus and all these intricacies on like how we can even display the content and like mixing Lucasfilm and Pixar. You can't do that. And like it was really fun. And it was fun because of the content, but then I also realized it's fun because on the viewer side, I get to connect people with things they really want to watch. And I didn't really work as much, obviously, with the creators of the Disney content aside from like the reps. So as things moved on and I realized, I ended up at Evernote for a bit. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to keep doing, because it had been 4 years of being in the industry, the tech industry at that point, I realized I missed kind of working on like true media. Then I ended up on LinkedIn doing that and kind of like helping democratize creation at this point. Like, how do we allow anybody, if they want to create? And then I also work closely with the team that helps get that content in front of the right people. So like making sure that your feeds are actually the feeds you want to see, which is a constant evolution. People love talking about the algorithm, but yeah, so I just realized that I don't know if I'll always work at this intersection of these two things, but I still like it. So I'm still going to do it. But I think at this point, like the reason why I continually evolves and now it's the fact that I can help people, especially now in the space of like everyone's a creator now. And so like, how can we help them? LinkedIn's kind of like the final frontier almost in a way of like, even big brands ask what they should post on LinkedIn. So how do we help them discover that like, you don't need to be super filtered on this platform even. So yeah.
Excellent question. Excellent question, Kevin. My final question for you, Sydney, would be, if we could go back and talk to Sydney as she's just walking off the stage at graduation 2015, give her advice on based on what you know now, what new advice that maybe you haven't shared with us yet would you advise your younger self?
So aside from don't wait 2 years to take a vacation after graduation, that was one of them. Don't wait 2 years. I think it was, a year and a half. Ignoring like a holiday break. I took a year and a half to take a vacation after graduation, which was silly. So aside from the whole burnout thing and things like that, aside from my advice around like asking questions, I would say, I don't think I've mentioned this in any of the conversations yet. As you continue to grow and you work with so many people, make sure you maintain your sense of empathy towards others. Things will continue to sometimes feel like a giant group project. Like that's the whole joke, right? People are like, oh, I'm in a group project. I'm the only one working. That feeling kind of goes away, but you will continue to have people that are directly responsible for like your team's success, etc. There's not a lot of like solo missions in this world in terms of business. And so make sure that you're working and leading with empathy. A lot of people have a lot of stuff going on, and it's very easy to be like mad at someone that you don't see in person because they're not responding at the right time or the work wasn't up to par this time. A lot of people have a lot going on. So it's going to continue to feel like a group project sometimes, even though you're graduating, but be nice to people, continue to be nice to people, and take a step back sometimes and realize that we're not doctors. we're making really fun things. So, not everything needs to be massively high stakes either.
Excellent. I've put your LinkedIn profile scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So if you're watching this, feel free to reach out to Sydney. First, thank you, Kevin, for being an amazing co-host. So appreciate your attention and time today. And finally, thank you, Sydney, for taking time out of your day, both today and on, I think it was Tuesday, to spend a lot of time with us today. We really appreciate you in terms of giving your perspective, being an EHM grad, and also just being a female in the industry. That's really helpful for all of our students.
Yeah, of course. And feel free to connect with me and reach out if I can do anything. And if I can't, I'll try and push you in the right direction. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So if you're watching, we will have an alumni networking event on March 11th at 6:30 p.m. It will be virtual, so pay attention to your email and our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Slack channels for updates on that. We will see you in March for another episode of Industry Insider. Enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe, and we will see you soon. Bye, everyone.